Hi, and welcome to Ask the Experts, Adaptive Insights in Financial Planning. I'm Danielle White, Vice President of Global Customer Engagement for Collaborative Solutions, and welcome to our session today. To get started, just a reminder that the information discussed during this webinar is based on our best practices at Collaborative Solutions and is based on the information we have to date. So if we're talking about anything that seems specific to Corona and the pandemic that we're in now, we know that things are changing rapidly and will continue to change. So it's based on what we know today. And in final decisions, always make sure that you are following up with any rules and regulations being released from your local, state, and federal resources. So I'm going to talk a little bit about collaborative and then introduce our experts and our expertise. And then we're going to go into a planning scenarios demo today. And finally, we'll have audience Q&A. Please make sure that you use the questions function in your webinar to let us know any questions that you have, and we will follow up with you and make sure that you're unmuted. So with that, for those of you who aren't familiar with Collaborative Solutions, we are a finance, HR, and student transformation consultancy. We have over 800 Workday customers that we have worked with and are very proud of our 98% customer satisfaction rate. We have an all-encompassing strategy planning, post-go live, and change management services, and all of those are Workday certified as well. And we are known as having more experience in the ecosystem than any other partner. We are very proud of our workplace awards, and you'll see those at the bottom because we know that employees who are happy with where they work make for customers who are very happy with the services we provide. And then obviously leading into who we are today, we have Workday experts across the board with over 100 product leads. And starting with that, our experts today are going to include Akash Nagandhi, who's a senior manager in our financial consulting practice and has been implementing planning solutions for 10 years. And Suketu Mohini is a senior principal in our financials consulting practice and has been implementing planning solutions for over 20 years. And as you think about our experts, they've served a variety of industries across financial services, healthcare, higher education, government, manufacturing, and retail. And some of the business objectives modeled and planned for have included revenue increase and retention, resource planning, staffing and raw materials, cost control, considering in-house versus consulting, and expansion versus renting, and pro forma financial statements. And some examples of some planning customers of Collaborative include the logos we see here, Intuit, TruGreen, Pan American Health Organization, Wake Forest University. So again, across industries, we have a plethora of experience helping customers with their planning needs and forecasting. And so with that, we will go ahead and get started because we know that everybody plans and that's what you're here to go for. So I'm going to go ahead and get another attendee set up. Suketu, you should be good.
All right. Thank you, Danielle. Good morning, all. Hope you can see my screen now. You guys see my screen?
We can now, Suketu.
All right, thank you. Good morning, all. My name is Suketu Mohini, and as Daniel already introduced myself, I do have over 20 years of planning experience. And today I'm going to share with you some of the planning scenarios that we have set up for different clients. Important to current economic and regulatory environments. Most of the people are now not only doing the revenue planning so much, but they're more so concentrating on how to staff. What are the production capacity that I have? Say, for example, manufacturers thinking in that terms. The retailers and other organizations are also considering about staffing. And in continuing to do so, more and more corporations, as they have allowed their employees to work from home, they're thinking about, hey, do I need all this retail space? Do I need all this building that I have acquired over the years to house these people? So these are the most pressing kind of scenarios and use cases that people are thinking about and trying to come up with a sort of a solution. So how can Adaptive help with that? So to show you and share with you some of the examples that I have set up here, And I'll walk you through with a kind of a real life examples and how you can enhance upon all those different parameters that I've already configured here for a demo purposes. So in this example here, what I'm trying to do here as a production manager, I have been asked or have been provided a number of units that will be demanded by my salespeople. So I have reached out to my sales organization and I asked them, hey, give me a realistic scenario, your worst scenario, your best scenario, whatever the case is for our demand of the products in month of July 2020. So all in all, they came together and says, you know what, this is our current as is scenario. We'll be able to sell 5,000 units at the unit rate or unit price of $20. The best case, obviously, is we'll continue to maintain the same sales target and achieve the same sales quota. But the worst case scenarios is we can only sell about 2,500 units, and we'll have to provide some discount on our sales price. Another couple of other scenarios are 3,000 units at $20, 3,000 units at $18, and 4,000 units at $15. So as a production manager, now I have taken all this data and I'm trying to figure out where can I come up with this production. So I have 4 units, manufacturing units, each with a different capacity. So now I'm able to go in and for each different kind of scenario, I can come up with the unit that I will utilize to generate the number of units that my salespeople are targeting and giving me an estimate of how much they'll be able to sell. So in my best case scenario, here's my capacity for East Zone location is 2,000 units. My central location is 1,500 units and so on. And my target remains the same. So with this combination of 1,500 units in East, 1,000 units each in Central Mountain Zone, and 1,000 unit in my plan in 1,500 units in my plan in Pacific Zone, I can come up with about 5,000 units. In the worst case scenario where the estimate is 2,500 units, I'm thinking about utilizing my Central Zone and Mountain Zone to generate that number of units. So let's look at a little bit quickly about the cost. So each plant has some fixed costs associated with, there is a variable cost, and then there is also some additional cost that we will incur when we utilize only one production plant or 2 production plant to generate and transport the products from one zone to another. So in the worst case scenario, where the target is 2,500 units, as a production manager, I'm thinking, well, I can produce this unit of 1,500 and 1,000 from Central and Mountain Zone because I know my fixed costs are a little lower and also my variable costs are lower. But at the same time, when I'm producing only in those 2 plants, I will incur additional costs for transportation. So if I allocate or if I target 1,500 and 1,000 from those 2 production plants, you can see here that my net will be a negative. In scenario 3, where it's a 3,000 production units, I can spread it across different plants to generate the number of units, and so on and so forth. So this is a very high level example. I know it is not always that simplistic, but you can see that we can bring in additional parameters in case of union contracts. Well, you may have some union contracts at each different production plant, and which allows you to not lower your output by certain capacity. So you'll have to take those into consideration. So you can add those KPIs or you can add those certain assumptions to it. Now, how does the adaptive power comes into play here? So you're looking at only 1 month, but I can easily switch from 1 month to a longer horizon. So I'm by switching my parameters, I can now plan for a longer horizon. So as a production manager, I just went on from planning or estimating from July all the way across to December 2021. So just by switching your view ability, you're able to go from 1 month of planning or one scenario planning to multiple scenario or multiple months of planning. So now as a production manager, I can say, hey, I'm only going to make 3,000 units in July. I like this scenario, but now let me see what happens when I try to increase my capacity. So how do I do that? Well, pretty easy here. So I'm going to increase my demand by 100 units per month. As you can see, by entering only a couple of different keystrokes, I'm able to now replicate and increase the units throughout the time period that I've selected. Similarly, I can say, okay, for the next 2 months or 3 months, I'm going to have $18 per unit, but then I can start increasing my per unit revenue to a time frame where I can go and get my current per unit pricing that is already available to me. I know my capacity is not going to increase. I can copy that. Now I can play with the target, I can play with the fixed cost, whatever other variables that I've included or I would like to include in this scenario, I can do that. And by simply using a save button, the system will provide you the bottom line or whatever your variable calculation that you are trying to achieve instantaneously. So real life scenario in the current circumstances, I know not only the manufacturing, but a lot of other type of industries are looking at revenue and how and where to generate that revenue. You can think in terms of banking, you can think in terms of other service type organization where they're thinking about, hey, where can I get my revenue from? My clients, my customer based in Northeast, well, do I have enough people there who can go out and talk to them and generate revenue, and so on and so forth. Now let's take this example to one level below. So from the production manager, now I'm wearing a hat of a plant manager. So the production manager gave me a target that in July, I have this best and worst scenario available here. How am I going to staff my people? So we are moving more from quantitative analysis to a qualitative analysis now. So in order to do that, as a plant manager, I know that I need some machine operators, some assembly line managers. Again, I'm keeping it as a simple high level, but you can see that I can add additional job codes and job profiles that are available to a plant manager. So in this case, or in this example, I have selected machine operators, this is my job code, and assembly line people. Within that job codes, I have grouped the people based on their number of years of experience. Now in Workday HCM, you have a lot of other work tags and related to positions and jobs that are available. So you can bring that in to further delineate your grouping. So in this case, again, I have grouped them into 3 different groupings based on their years of experience. So I have few people with more than 10 years of experience as machine operators. I have another group of people that have between 5 to 10 years of experience, and I have another group of people with less than 5 years of experience. I also know from my previous analysis that we've been keeping that the per day average output by grouping, which I have populated in this work. And I also know their average hourly rate, so which is available to me. And same thing for my assembly lines people. I'm keeping the grouping the same or similar so that it's easy to understand and demo. So in this case, again, as my assembly line people, I have grouped them into personnels or FTEs with greater than 10 years of experience, experience between 5 and 10 years, and experience for less than 5 years. So currently I have 3 people or 3 FTEs with experience of greater than 10 years for both as machine operators and assembly line. 2 FTEs with between 5 to 10 years of experience, and 3 FTEs with less than 3 years of experience. So all in all, in combination of that particular grouping, I'm able to manufacture in my plant about 1,480 units. My plant capacity is 1,500 units, you can see on the top line. The target that is given to me by my headquarters is, well, currently I'm making 1,500 units. The best case remains 1,500 units. The worst case scenario is I'm not going to make any units, so that is 0 here. And then I'm asked to manufacture 500 units, 1,000 units, 1,250 units, and 1,500 units. So now as a plant manager, I can go into this planning worksheet and says, hey, how can I make 500 or how can I manufacture 500 units? Well, by combining one people are asking or staffing one machine operator with over 10 years of experience, another machine operator between 5 and 10 years, and another with less than 10 years of experience. And with assembly line, also with the same FTE, number of FTEs, I can generate 560 units. Well, it is over than what they are asking. In that case, I can say, hey, how about if I reduce this FTE to only 70.75%? So somebody is going to be working part-time, see what that impact is. So here I'm not looking so much on the dollar amounts, but on my capacity of staffing and how am I going to staff them. It is sort of a staff planning also is available to you in Adaptive. Again, I'm trying to keep it pretty simple. As you can see that in typical Workday implementation, you have probably 8 to 10 job codes, 8 to 10 family job. However, you have segregated and delineated a job can be brought into Adaptive and will allow you or give you an ability to plan for staffing purposes. And as we all know, the current situation, everybody is looking at this staffing capacity right now, no matter what type of your organization is. Manufacturing, healthcare, talk about higher education. They're also looking at the same thing. Any questions so far before I go into my next demo slide? Daniel, is there any questions from
No
anybody?
questions so far, Suketu.
Okay, good. Now, let's just pivot and look at a higher education scenario. So as you all know that there are more than about 15 or 18,000 institutions in this country, and everybody is talking about conducting their classes online. So what happens in that case is a couple of interesting things comes out. That their revenue per unit may not change that much. However, their housing revenue will almost go down to 0. So the number of students coming in and staying in that housing is probably going to be 0. Another thing that is interesting is they're going to have a lot of online classes. And when you do a lot of online classes, you are now able to take the same professor that has been conducting 1 or 2 classes within a week, ask him or her to do additional classes online. You can just tape the classes and have students view it at their leisure or whenever their timing is available. By doing that, what happens is And this is what I know some of my clients are already looking at, is the student faculty ratio and student staff ratio. So if it's a one-on-one classroom environment, typically you have 35 to 40 students per classroom. So your faculty to the student ratio is probably 40. But now as we shift gear and move more and more towards a online classes environment, well, we can increase the student to faculty ratio to maybe 50 to maybe 60. The same thing about the student to staff ratio, that there were one staff needed to support 100 students. Well, we can increase that ratio to 150 or 200, whatever number that we need. Now, that number is probably based on what type of university it is, where it is located, how many students are currently enrolled, what other different kind of activities they're supporting. So if you have an athletic director and other athletic abilities activities that is being taking place in the university, well, you may not be able to achieve the student to staff ratio that much, but by and large, you are able to change the student to staff ratio as more and more students are going to take classes online. So here's an example of a dashboard. That's what we call interactive dashboard, where I've created a scenario for accounting department. So currently, accounting department, as is, they have 600 students with housing. They have about 1,300 students without housing. So in total, they have 1,900 students in their department studying. They each have to take 15 credits. Per credit fees is 325. And based on my student to faculty ratio, student to staff ratio, I can now quickly estimate a total revenue, total expenses, and here is my net. You're looking only at fall semester here, and then you're also looking at full year here. So I have 3 scenarios for my fall semester, which we are going to be starting in another few months. So good or as is scenarios is 600 and 1,300 combination, but as of the information that we are receiving and the number of enrollers that are coming into the school, we know that my housing demand is going down to half. My number of enrollees are also starting to come at a little lower number. Some of the people who had already signed a contract are like trying to negotiate out of it because of economic impact of their parents or not being able to get loans to attend the university, whatever the reason is. On this combination, and by increasing my student to faculty ratio and student to staff ratio, I can still generate a good net surplus on scenario 1. However, if more and more students start getting it online, and we also comment, and there are a lot of universities that are looking at a higher education or certificate courses for adults. So what if the university push for it and there are 500 students that you can enroll in for your online adult certification courses? Well, what's going to happen is that they are not going to be, there's going to be some impact on number of credits. The full-time students typically takes 15 credits per semester, but these are certificate courses, so your number of credits will come down to, let's say, 13. And if that came down to 13, as you can see that there's going to be a net shortfall for that particular semester. Now, again, I'm keeping it up with a very high level, but typically the universities at this time, they're breaking this thing out between graduate, undergraduates, postgraduate students, and online classes and everything to do their scenarios. As I mentioned before, this is an interactive dashboard. So there's also scenario analysis or scenario changes that you can perform in the same dashboard and see the impact of the number going up here. So for example, right now I'm looking at scenario 2 here with 300 students with housing, 1,300 without housing, and 500 students in online. and I have selected number of credits as 13. What if I were to increase the number of credits to say 14? Or what if I were to change the per credit fees to say 350 for both the semesters? So now you can see that in the same dashboard, able to see the changes and see now that I have a surplus where I used to have a shortfall in the previous example. So I think it's 11:30. So any questions so far? Anybody has any questions in regards to what additional parameters can we include in any of those demos, or is there any real live questions that they have and they would like to tackle?
So, Ketu, a couple questions that we do have is, as we look at planning and thinking about the collaboration that's required for planning, a question is, am I able to assign planning tasks to members outside of my team?
Yes, definitely. So planning is a kind of standalone tool. If you are thinking in terms of Workday, you can have additional people assigned to adaptive only and provide them access to your planning cycle. They will be able to utilize the tool and plan and provide you information.
Excellent. I
You
think the
can
other thing that we're,
also, yes, one second.
sorry,
You
go
can
ahead.
ask, yeah, you can also ask them to provide you an explanation. So when the plant manager is planning for this worst case, best case scenario, he or she has an access to these notes. Hey, I'm assuming 20 working days in a month. That's an example. If you're asking your salespeople to fill up this worksheet and provide you information, you should also ask them to give you some sort of narrative on it, saying, hey, how did you come up with 2,500 units in your location or in your territory? So this will also help you in analyzing. So I'm trying to focus here is it's not only qualitative, but also quantitative. That's the thing I'm trying to convey here. Hope everybody gets that.
Thanks, Ketu. Another question is, aside from the data in Workday, I have data in Excel, Salesforce, JD Edwards, and other areas. Am I able to run scenarios in Adaptive using this additional information?
Yes, this is a kind of a standalone system. You can import data from various different other sources, and we normally do that at most of the clients. Allows them to bring in some kind of statistical information. So if you are a non-manufacturing, say if you are a retailer, or if you have any other statistic that you want to bring into the system, which is not in Workday, yes, you're allowed to do that. There is a simple flat file available where you can upload the data into a cube or a model or even the standard.
This is Akash, and with that said, Workday is also building out connectors. So they have made integration very easy from Workday into Adaptive using Workday enabled reports. So if you can report out of Workday, we can bring it into Adaptive through an integration. And with that same type of design integration that Sukit is showing right now, we can build integrations to Salesforce and other CRM tools. So there's many options. Yep.
Yeah. So here is an example where the integration has been built for NetSuite, Workday, any kind of JDBC connection, Salesforce, and Dynamics GP also.
Thanks. Another question is, can I model for multiple scenarios at the same time? For example, a revenue decrease with an employee retention increase and cost control through outsourcing.
Yes, you can. As I showed in all the 3 different scenarios here, I can bring in additional parameters here. This is an example of a production where I brought in my variable and fixed costs. Well, you can also bring in your rental cost versus leasing cost, any other combinations that you want to do. My focus today was more on qualitative rather than quantitative, but any combination is allowed. And whatever you think in terms of whatever you're allowed to do it in, or whatever you're doing it in Excel right now on off at some worksheets, well, why don't you bring the data into Adaptive? Use Adaptive analytics and calculation engine to do your calculations and save the data so you can now decimate the same information throughout your organization. You don't have to send out email. People have access to Adaptive. They can log into Adaptive and build a dashboard so they can see it. Hey, this is what people are thinking, right? So here I have an example of my not only revenue and expenses, which is based on student to faculty and staff to faculty ratio, but I also have other expenses per student. If I scroll down here I have my revenue, which is based on tuition revenue, housing revenue, and also pass-through revenue. So in the universities and higher eds, we know that there is some pass-through revenues, which are like bookstore revenues and your dining room revenues and so on. So yes, you can combine those two.
The modeling in Adaptive is very flexible in the sense that, it's 4 walls and we can build out, whatever model you want to, and then we can build calculations. So in your example, revenue decrease with an employee retention increase, we can build that into our model using assumptions, and then see how that would cascade and affect downstream calculations.
I think one more question is just a follow-up on the time scales. We saw, obviously you be able to extend the time scales out so that we started with a couple of quarters and then went further out. Is there a limitation as to how far out, or can you set parameters that you want to see it for, monthly for a year, or annually for 5 years, or monthly for 5 years?
Yes, so those parameters are set by your versions. So versions meaning your scenario. So my scenario here is what if scenario 1, 2, and 3. So if I can quickly pivot to a version, I can show you that within a version, I can expand my time parameters. So in my what if scenario here, I'm going from 2018 to 2021, but I can go as far as my system would let me. So whatever time frame, if I would like 5 to 10 years, and normally 3 to 5 years of modeling and planning is typical in all the industry. And wherever I've set it up, people would like to do 3 to 5 years of planning. So yes, that is controlled by your what if scenarios. So if I expand it to 2020, 23, and now I should be able to expand my time horizon, which was only December 2021 to 2023. So yes, that is possible, 5 to 10 years. You can even do 15 years if you choose to.
Can you also take the individual units down so that it might be planned at a daily or weekly level, not just a monthly level?
Yes. In Adaptive, the timeline is set up with from day onwards. So you have number of days, and day 1 through 30 rolls into a month, and month rolls into quarters, and so on. That's how the hierarchy is set up. In this particular instance, we have chosen to do it at monthly level, but yeah, usually you can switch it from month to day or to quarter as needed. As you can see now, by switching on the version, I'm now able to go all the way to 2023 for my planning purposes.
Great, thank you. I'm going to give it just another minute. Those were all the questions we've had so far. If anybody else has any other questions they'd like to ask, please go ahead and submit them. I think that's all our questions for today. So I want to thank everyone for joining us today, and thank you for our experts for walking us through a great demo of adaptive and some planning scenarios. Just a reminder that Ask the Experts will be back in June, so please keep an eye on our announcements on the topics coming soon. If you have any follow-up questions, please feel free to email us at digitaltransformation@collaborativesolutions.com. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.